Hi, everyone. This is Pop Goes the Stack, the podcast that side-eyes every game-changing feature like it's a 2 a.m. hotfix. I am Lori MacVittie. Proceed with caution, because I am alone in hosting again as Joel is out. We're not sure why. I'm pretty sure it's not training. We asked him about that. He's not AI. So my dog is back here. So, he may want to interject just to, keep things lively. But in the meantime, we brought Connor Hicks on again. Hi, Connor.
Hello. I'll do my best Joel impression.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Because we're going to talk about MCP, right? Okay. Model Context Protocol. I think it actually stands for other things too. So we have to specify that. The style guide says so. These are enabling tools, and it's a really exciting time. Everyone's excited by being able to do this. I know our latest research says that people are adopting MCP pretty quickly. Some might say too quickly. Because as we know, GB hackers found a nice list of unvetted MCP servers that are sneaking into supply chains. They're exfiltrating creds, and they are gnawing at the very trust we hand them. So we wanted to talk about MCP tools gone wild in the enterprise, because this is a real risk. Especially the pace of adoption around AI is so fast that we are just grabbing things without reading any of the instructions or, considering the risks and just putting them into place because, gosh, they're cool.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, first off, all I have to say is, who could have seen this coming? All of us.
Yeah.
There's such an excitement factor around MCP and connecting AI agents to every which thing that you do that people are leaping before they think, and it needs to slow down.
It needs to really slow down. It's not like we haven't seen this kind of thing before. Now, I'm old. That's what the gray hair is from, really. That and 4 teenagers, but yeah, you'll learn about that, Connor. You'll learn about that. But
Yep.
in the early days of the web, we had static pages, and it was cool. I mean, come on, it was awesome. But we really wanted things more dynamic, dynamic clocks, countdowns, data, and CGI, right? The common gateway interface allowed us to actually execute external code and give us things like database stuff, right? Or just go out and retrieve something or run a tool. A tool. As you said, who could have seen this coming? Well, people who've been around a while might have thought, this looks similar. So we've seen this before, where we embrace the capability because it accelerates so much innovation. But there are risks that we need to watch out for, especially with MCP, because we're only 18 months or so into this.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I thought that we had a bit of a supply chain security revolution over the past couple of years, but the last few months is making me think that we might have forgotten a couple of things we learned from that wave. Because just because the tool is out there, just because somebody has developed an MCP server to give your AI agent access to X, Y, and Z, doesn't mean that you should just immediately pip install it and run with it. You have to do a little bit of due diligence first.
Oh, that absolutely. I mean, every company should have, right, a process that says, yes, it's okay to run this software. No, it's not. I know we have to go through considerable, right, evaluations of both the provider and the tool itself to make sure it's safe to be running in our environments, because we don't want things like this to happen. So you would think there'd be some kind of, dare I say the word, governance over. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll let myself out. Is that
No,
oh
it's an engineer, one of an engineer's least favorite words, but I think when
yeah.
it comes to building secure and stable enterprise systems, it has to be a word in your vocabulary, or else you're going to get in big trouble. And there's kind of two ways to approach connecting, your APIs and your tools to AI agents. You can either say, oh, hey, there's a shiny open source one on GitHub that I can just grab and pull into my system. Or you can build your own, you can do your own, blood, sweat, and tears to build these tool specific, endpoints that are compatible with MCP and make sure that you do it all yourself. So there's, the question I think at hand is, do you take every API that you need access to and wrap it, in a bespoke MCP endpoint yourself? Or is there a safe way to embrace the open source community that's coming out around these things?
Well, and I like that thought, because inside of that is the notion that maybe wrapping APIs in MCP, very specifically choosing which ones agents will have access to, is actually a security and governance, right, method of making sure that they don't have too much access, that they can't do things they shouldn't be doing, and really controlling it while still enabling them to help you do automation, or do things faster, whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So I think that's really important, is to look at it. This is one of those times when security really is like an enabler. Like, if you do it right, you're going to enable people to actually experiment and use MCP and agents to do new things without exposing yourself to risk.
That's right. I mean, principle of least privilege has existed for eons. And so I'm not quite sure why we aren't adhering to that with the world of MCP. Now, I can think of a couple of examples where somebody has built, a wonderful, and they put a lot of hard work in, even if it's not malicious, right? Even if an MCP server that you pull off of GitHub is not malicious, it still tries to expose everything. Like, take GitHub, for example. You might have 10 different tools and resources that you could access through the GitHub MCP server, but the application that you're building, or the use case that you have, might only need 2 or 3 of them. And so why do you risk installing an MCP server that exposes 10 when you only need 3?
Yeah, least privilege should also be called least access when it relates to, right,
Mm-hmm.
APIs. You only need what you need. You don't need everything.
That's
And
right.
I think that's it's I'm thinking of like NPM poisoning, right? Package poisoning, where,
Yeah.
your images just go out and they just pull whatever package, right, is out there, and people have actually used that to, inject into the supply chain poison packages that then can run rampant in your environment. And these tools, MCP servers, if you're just grabbing them willy nilly and going, that looks good, can potentially do the same thing if you don't, where's your code review? Did you look through the code that you just deployed? That should be at least at a minimum if you're going to trust it, and make sure that it's not, got some kind of a trigger or a redirect where it's, going out and it's pulling, you know, data from poison pools and
Mm-hmm.
tools very closely, right? From poison wells, as it were, then, and, or running tools it shouldn't. So I think that's
Yeah.
really important.
100%. And, we sometimes give these tools our credentials because we want them to do magical AI agent things for us, not realizing the implications that intentionally giving that access has. Even if the tool, is not 100% malicious, you can still accidentally provision maybe an API token that has more permissions than you want it to have. And so that MCP server ends up allowing things that shouldn't happen. And AI agents are squirrely, right? They will come up with, solutions to problems in ways that you didn't expect them to. So maybe I write, an AI agent to summarize my GitHub issues and, write a plan for me for my day to go and tackle the issues that I have available. But maybe in an agent's, AI brain, it thinks, well, if I just write all the code and commit it all to main, then I've done your work for you. And so that's the easiest way to organize your day. But if I don't give them permission to push to main in the first place, then we can't make that mistake.
The danger of telling it you are a helpful assistant, maybe. Wow, it really tried to live up to that system prompt there. You kind of like triggered a thought. Like, a lot of systems have, and I can do this on most things. Once I log in, I can automatically provision an API token. So it is entirely possible that an agent could go, "Oh, I can just do that," when it wasn't supposed to. So yes, giving it your creds and having it go, oh, I'll just log in. Oh, I can do it that way. Let me get, oh, right. And now
Hmm.
suddenly it's like elevated its privilege through proper processes that exist and are absolutely valid, but it wasn't supposed to. But it didn't
That's
know
right.
that.
That's right. No, it's a little bit of a terrifying thought. I don't want to be installing an agent or an MCP server that is meant to help me, perform some software development tasks and accidentally have it believe that it is now the GitHub admin for my whole organization.
Well, yeah, it might think that. I mean, there's a prompt injection thing I've heard about that could, yeah, right? I mean, there's so many ways that this could go wrong. It boggles the mind really when you think about it. It's MCP is it's effectively acting as a proxy for any tool or system that you give it access to. And that's
That's
going to
right.
allow AI agents to use it in ways that you never imagine. You almost have to think of, if I gave a toddler this toy, right? What is that toddler going to do? We think we know, but I've seen sticks, right? I mean, that's the typical case, right? You give a kid a stick, it's a sword, it's a magic wand, it's a laser, it's a lightsaber. You don't know what they're going to come up with. And
Yeah.
tools are in their infancy right now, right? This notion, this MCP, and we kind of have to treat it that way, that what could it possibly do that I would never think to do.
It sounds like you're advocating for toddler proofing all of our APIs
I
because
Absolutely.
maybe
I
that's the mental approach we should all have to AI agents. Treat them like a toddler with a stick and hope that they don't poke themselves in the eye.
Yes. Well, isn't that part of the security mindset? Is right? Is think about, how could this be abused? Not how will it, but how could it? Because how will it? We know, right? Some of those things. I mean, you're going to get this kind of an attack. People are going to do this. They're going to do that. They're going to. Okay, we know that. But how could they? Are there scenarios that we haven't considered? And then how viable are they? Because it's, sure, you can imagine a lot of crazy things, but only some of them are viable. Those are the ones you really have to focus on and go after first, because they're more likely than the crazy ones, if you will.
That's right. I mean, so when I write, any piece of software, it's inevitable that there's going to be a bug. I'm just speaking for myself. There's going to be a bug here and there. I don't know about you, but there's going to be a bug here or there when I write software. And there's a whole class of software development techniques that you can use to limit the blast radius of a bug that might come up in software. But we also now have to be thinking of, how do we limit the blast radius of like a misbehaving toddler, essentially? And does that mean that we have to go and just tightly restrict the access and the blast radius of all the potential APIs that these toddlers could access? I think that's the only way that we can do it today safely, until we have better tooling, better supply chain around MCP, better security vulnerability stacks in the enterprise to really look at these, because we have plenty of tooling to look at Python modules and Go packages and Rust crates and scan them for vulnerabilities. But MCP servers connected to a non-deterministic LLM, I don't think we have enterprise scanning tools for that yet.
Yeah, I don't think so, right? I mean, it's kind of like scanning, dynamically generated on the fly things. You can't necessarily prepare for that, again, unless you're using your imagination and thinking ahead. But we do need to think ahead, and some of it is, we the idea of having an MCP server have access to different systems and such is so that we can build workflows. And I think it's important to remember that in most cases, when we talk about we're going to put them into production, they're going to help us, it's so that they can do tasks that are essentially components of a larger business process. And maybe instead of just putting them in and saying, okay, figure it out, we map that process and we say, okay, this process requires these things so they can have access to these systems, and really limit it as we're starting to build it out, because in doing so we'll get a better understanding of how they work, how they think even, right? What is, they keep going to this other system, why, right? Maybe maybe you learn something. Maybe you
Right.
find out you need to tighten your controls.
Right. You know what? This is reminding me, in a previous life, I worked very deeply on WebAssembly. I think this is a topic that has come up on, several
It
F5 podcasts.
has.
I think we
Yeah.
might even have a whole podcast about it. I'm not
I
sure.
think maybe. Mhm.
But it reminds me of WebAssembly quite a lot because one of the great features of WebAssembly is being able to completely lock down the execution environment of the code that you're writing. And so it begs the question, do we need some kind of similar paradigm for agents and tools? Do we need a deny by default environment that is maybe something that's created by the industry to help us constrain the blast radius of these agents?
Well, isn't that the kind of the intent of zero trust? Is you start with zero trust, like actually zero trust, and then we only give you what you need as you need it, and then always go back and default to that. No, you don't have anything, and kind of build it from there, right?
Yes, if only zero trust was the default in enterprises. I think we might get there one day, but I think there's still, some amount of work that needs to be done for really all the enterprises in this universe to adopt those practices, I think.
That's true, but I actually thought you were going to say if only zero trust were real. I mean, that's where I thought you were going, and you didn't. So now I'm not sure whether that's me or you. So, but it's very hard. It's very difficult because it's a complete change in mindset from how we've traditionally operated. Because most environments way back in the day were completely open because they were completely contained, right? They didn't have to worry about it. You either had access to a system or you didn't. It wasn't at the object level, which we know from things like OWASP, right? Object level authorization is actually very important. So you didn't have that. So we're actually building from a completely open and trying to reduce down. And we know that the human condition is that when you take away access and privileges, they get kind of frustrated by it, especially when they don't expect it or they needed access to do their job. So it's a very difficult process to navigate in terms of like cultural mindset in an organization, as well as just putting the tools in place, because a lot of organizations have big chunks that were never built with this kind of a technology in place or even in mind. Like, would we ever need that? No, just keep it open. So it's very difficult. It's very hard.
It is. Yeah, I mean, you're reminding me of, I'm trying to eat healthier, so I hide my snacks so that I can't accidentally go and eat more than I should. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing where you are used to something working a certain way, and then adapting is hard. It's just not our it's not our nature, I suppose. Um, so, I mean, what are the takeaways? What do we think is important for people to consider when they're trying to adopt MCP and tools?
Wow. Connor's playing host. I like this. Well, Connor, I think, yeah, one of the takeaways is like, whoa, okay, slow down for a second. Yes, MCP is incredible. Yes, you should adopt it, but you should also be aware of the risks and approach it more strategically with security in mind. Like, that's the big takeaway. Like, these do not come risk free. And if you just let them run willy nilly, they are going to wreak havoc across all of your infrastructure, your environments, period. So
Yeah.
be careful with it. Yes, do it, but do it carefully.
That's right. I would also say let's not forget the last however many decades of supply chain and access management best practices. Just because you put a shiny bow on it that says MCP server here does not mean that you should forget all of the things that we've learned about making secure and a safe enterprise software.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe a third one would be have a policy around the use of these public MCP servers that are out there on the internet offering you access, because you don't have any visibility into what they're actually doing, what tools they're calling, what they're collecting, and how they're behaving. So be more thoughtful about what public MCP servers you allow to interact with your internal systems and the people that are using AI.
Absolutely. Just because an AI agent promises to make your life easier doesn't mean it's not also going to rob you blind.
Wow, we are terribly cynical today. I mean, just we are. But
That's the security professional in me.
that's the security side. Well, before we get even more cynical and decide to find the red button and just like turn everything off, yeah, let's wrap. And we'll ask people, hey, subscribe now, stash your backups. Absolutely. And join us next time for more production grade chaos.
Just don't let the agent stash your backup because it will lose it.